Hello, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's session. Still this morning for those of you in the out west, and we'd like to welcome you to today's session introduced entitled "The Sacredness of First Nation Languages." My name is Denis Gertin. I'm based in Ottawa, and I'm one of the organizers of Truth and Reconciliation Week on behalf of the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. Our knowledge keeper today is Claudette Commanda. Elder Commanda is Algonquin Anishinaabe from Kitigan-Zibi Anishinaabe First Nation in Quebec. She has spent the last 30 years promoting First Nations history, culture, language, traditional knowledge, and rights as a university professor, a community speaker, and as the executive director of the First Nations Confederacy of Cultural Education Centers. We are very pleased that you're welcoming us into your classroom today, and we're pleased to welcome Elder Commanda to this session. Welcome, Claudette.
Thank you, Denis. Thank you for the introduction, and I thank you and your team for inviting me to present to the students. So to all the students and teachers, schools who are participating in this presentation at this afternoon, I begin by saying Kwe kakina, pijaje koma Anishinaabe ki oma maweneniwag. Kani Mich Kijigun Kinu ni Dishnakas Kitagan Zibi Donjaban. I welcomed you and I introduced myself in my language, the Algonquin language, the Algonquin Anishinaabe language. This is the first language of my people's land, Algonquin. And what I said in my language to you was, hello, hello everyone. I bring you greetings and I welcome you to this homeland, the ancestral homeland of the Algonquin people. My name is Claudette Commanda, and I am from Kitigan-Zibi and Anishinaabe Algonquin First Nation. But I introduced myself in my language or in my spirit name, Ka Ni Mich Kijigun Kinu. To translate that my language or my name in my language to English, you lose the translation. In essence, it means the eagle who dances for you, or the eagle that is high in the sky that dances for you. And that name was given to me by my elders, ceremonial keepers, and the work that I needed to do to acquire my spirit language. As First Nations people, or First Peoples of this land called Canada, all our tribes have our ways of life, our ways of knowing. We all have our ancestral languages. Our traditions are part of our languages, or our languages express our traditions. We were given names before we became human to live upon this physical world, Mother Earth. The Creator gifted us with our spirit name. But that was changed. We were not allowed to even have our own names in our languages because our languages were impacted by a policy called residential schools. This week, Canada embarks on National Truth and Reconciliation Week with various activities that are taking place to honor, to remember, those children who did not make it home from residential schools, and to honor and remember residential school survivors. It is also a time for all Canadians to listen, to learn, to acknowledge, and to understand why it is so important that the lessons, the history, and the information and the knowledge of Indian residential schools policy is so important, because indeed it did impact our communities. Indeed, our communities have been working towards healing of self, of family, of nations, of communities, and our languages and cultures is what provides the healing for us. the reclamation of our languages, the restoration of our identity and our culture brings forth holistic healing. And it provides us that space that was always gifted to us by the Creator in our creation, our rightful place upon Mother Earth. So I welcome you to my presentation, which is entitled The Sacredness of First Nation Languages. And I will share with you my knowledge, I will share with you my experience, and I will share with you why I believe our languages are sacred and why it is so important to protect the original and first languages of this land called Canada. So welcome. Welcome. And I do encourage all the students that when we open the floor for questions, please ask your questions. It is so important that a dialogue. It's so important to have dialogue. And it's through the sharing of knowledge is how we gain knowledge. We learn and we build that understanding. And we are all in this together to make a better world for First Nations and Canadians today and tomorrow. So embrace the activities of National Truth and Reconciliation Week and continue to learn about First Nations people. Just don't use this 1 week or this one day, September 30th, to learn about First Nations people. Every day you must learn about who we are as the first peoples of this land called Canada. So let me begin by my language. And wherever you are across Canada at this time in your classrooms, I invite you to learn my language. I also invite you to learn the language of the First Nations people whose territory where you live on. But for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to say a word to you in my language, and I will ask you to say that word. So please say the word kwe. Kwe. That word means hello. So hello to each and every one of you. Turn to your friend that's beside you, turn to your teacher and say kwe. And you are greeting one another in the Algonquin language and you are saying hello. Let's talk about languages. I'm not sure how much you know about First Nation languages here in Canada, but what I would like to share with you is that it's important for you to know that there are 10 First Nation linguistic families in Canada. Yes, there's also the Inuit language, and there's also the Michif language. But I am sharing with you First Nations. I'm speaking to you about First Nations. I'm speaking to you about who I am as an Algonquin First Nation. And so the information that I am sharing with you relates specifically to First Nations from an Algonquin and Anishinaabe perspective. So 10 First Nation linguistic families in Canada, and I encourage you to learn more about each of these linguistic families and the various tribes that fall under each of these linguistic families or language families and the different dialects. And I will share with you the names of these linguistic families as they are written in English. There is the Algonquian language family. There is the Athabascan language family. There is the Siouan language family. There is the Salish language family. There is the Timshak language family. There is the Iroquois language family. There is the Wakashan language family. There is the Haida language family. There is the Kootenai language family, and there is the Tlingit language family. And again, I emphasize that I'm reading the names in the way they are written in the English language. However, each of these language families, they pronounce and they spell the name of their language family in their ancestral language and knowledge. I'm an Algonquin, known as an Algonquin in the English language, but in my people's way and in my language, we are Anishinaabe o Mama Wenenewa. And this is how we identify ourselves in our ancestral language, our ancestral creation, and our ancestral knowledge. Each of these language families have a number of tribes that fall into each of these families. And the nations that fall into this one language family, for example, Algonquin, there are 50, it is said there are 52 nations that fall under this one language family. And each of these languages, whether they are Ojibwe, Plains, Cree, Maliseet, Mi'kmaq, or whomever those nations are, we are all related through the language, because it falls under Anishinaabe Muin. That is our word for language, Anishinaabe Muin, to speak who we are, because we are the land. We are connected to the land. We were created on the land, and our culture and our identity is expressed from the land through our language. And that is why language is so important to us as First Peoples. It is the connection to the land. It is the connection to our ancestors. It is the connection and that life way to the Creator, the one who made all and placed us upon Mother Earth to live. Anishinaabe. It means from whence above we are lowered to walk upon or sit upon Mother Earth. Anishinaabe. The sacredness of our language is the essence of our origins. It's the essence of our being. It is the essence of our creation. It is who we are. We are the land. Nindaki. And our languages have root words, and those root words turn into other words to identify, to explain what the meaning, to explain our actions in life. And another example I will give you, speaking about root words. The word for truth is dabwewin. But the root word, that means truth, dabwewin. But the root word, dabwewin comes from the root word ode. Ode is our word for heart. And where do you speak the truth? Is from your heart. Ode, my life, my truth. Dabwewin, I have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to be honest. And it is said, and we are taught, that when we hold one of our grandfathers in eagle feather, and when we are in prayer, we must hold this grandfather in our left hand. And that left, and you look at the hand to the heart and our arm, and it's connected to the left side to our heart. And therefore, we must always speak the truth. Ode, our heart, dabwewin, speaking that truth. The root word ode, we use that word now for the word truth, dabwewin. It is so important. Our languages are so important. Our languages are the expressions of who we are. Now, to go back to the dialects or the tribes that fall under that one language family, Anishinaabe, the closest relative to the Algonquins are the Ojibwe. We are Anishinaabe. We understand one another's languages. However, there's dialects, dialects, words, a different way of pronouncing, a different way of spelling, or a different way of meaning. But our languages we are connected through our languages. And even amongst the Algonquin nation has 11 communities. 11 communities. 9 are found in the province of Quebec. 2 are found in the province of Ontario. In the province of Ontario, you have Pikwakanon and you have Wagushish. And the 9 in Quebec, we are, with the 2 in Ontario, makes 11 communities that comprise who are the Algonquin nation. We are the one people under the Algonquin nation, Anishinaabe o Mamaweniniwa. We have the root of our language is the same, Anishinaabe Muin o Mamawenini. But our dialects are different from community to community. And an example I will share with you, in my community of Kitigan-Zibi, when we say, I'm hungry, or do you want to eat? We say, Niwiwisinin. Wisinin is the root, the root word for to eat. So to say I'm hungry, I will say ni wisinin. But my grandchildren, whose mother comes from a neighboring Algonquin community, and they are fluent in their Algonquin language, our dialect is different because for them to say I am hungry, they will say ni bakade, ni bakade. And what does ni bakade mean to me from an Anishinaabe Kitagon Zebri understanding? Bakade is our word for to be skinny. But when you think about it, if you don't eat, you're going to be skinny. And if you don't eat, you're going to lose that weight and you won't be healthy. So to say ni bakade means I'm hungry, and you need to have that nourishment in order for you to be healthy. Another example I will give you, how important that our language is to us and why it's so sacred, because it contains the essence of the origins of our being. It contains our action. It contains our knowledge. It's connection to the land. The word for forest or the bush is nopaming. But what that means is nopaming means where I go for my sustenance, where I go, because the forest provides everything that I need to survive here, everything that I need to keep me healthy and strong. Again, connection to the land, because the forest provides our medicine, it provides our shelter, it provides for the animals, it provides the water, it provides our safety, it provides everything that we need, all the sustenance that we need to live. Food, shelter, clothing, medicine. Language is so important, the sacredness of our languages. I cannot stress enough how important our languages are, and the sacredness of our languages, because our languages are the core identity of who we are. We live our lifestyles accordingly to the ecosystem, and our languages contain the knowledge of the ecosystem, from the land, the water, the plant life, the medicine life, the animals, all that is above, all that is below, everything that is around us, everything, every element of life. And it is said by our elders that if we do not have our languages, we are warm bodies without a spirit, because our languages have life, they contain life. Our languages have spirit. We believe that our languages are the sacred gift that has come directly from the Creator, because we were gifted with our languages while we were in that spirit form. We were gifted with our language, already gifted with our languages before we were lowered from above to live upon Mother Earth. And we had that knowledge. And that is why our languages are so important to Canada, because Canada is a land that has been here since time immemorial for First Nations people. Canada became a country only in 1867. So our knowledge, our ancestral knowledge and we've been here since time immemorial. It is so ancient, it is so sacred, it's just so enriched with so much knowledge and wisdom and experience and teachings, everything that we know, who we need and what we need to know as Anishinaabe or First Nations people of this land. Life is in our languages. Spirit is in our languages, because it comes directly from that spirit world. It is so important that our languages continue to flourish, to be maintained, because we need our languages for our prayers, for our ceremonies, our worldview, our understanding of our place in creation, our place in society, our place in our communities, in our nation. It's so important to our self-determination, our sovereignty as the first peoples of this land. And our languages, all those First Nation languages here in Canada and also in the United States, because we did not separate our land. We call our land Turtle Island, or what's commonly known as North America. We did not separate our land into countries or states or provinces. We still have our relatives that live what we call over on the medicine. There's a medicine line. So we have those Algonquin speaking people that are in the United States of America. But our languages are so important to all of us. Our languages are the first voices, the first identities, the first cultures, and the original voices, the original languages of these lands that have now become two countries, the United States of America and Canada. So we need to ensure that our languages will always be here. And the sacredness of language is because we are sacred. The sacredness of First Nation languages, because it is the core of our identity as who we are as the first peoples of this land, created on these lands and have lived here since time immemorial, and we will continue to be here forevermore. So the question is, are First Nation languages at risk of being lost? What is done to teach the children? Yes, they are at risk of being lost. And we know that the policy of residential schools have impacted our languages and our cultures. Without language, you don't have culture. Without culture, you don't have identity. Without identity, then who are you? We were gifted with identity, with culture and languages. Our languages are the expression of our culture. So yes, residential schools and other policies impacted our languages. So cultural loss and loss of language and culture, because we were not allowed to speak our languages in those residential schools. Children were not allowed to speak their languages. And I know you have educated yourself about residential schools and continue to educate yourself on residential schools. As my grandson said, if our children were young enough to have to endure the horrors of residential schools, then all Canadian children can learn about these residential schools, because we have to learn the truth in order to build healing. And the restoration, the revitalization, the protection and promotion of our languages is healing. We need to heal, and we find that healing in our languages. So what is being done to teach the children? Well, that depends on the community. It depends on the community needs. And again, there's First Nation communities across Canada, and each community, the language needs of each community will vary, because there's diversity in our languages, as well as there's diversity on the impacts of residential schools relating to the loss of language and culture. So therefore, the need is different. Yes, there are some communities whereby their language is still flourishing. I'm so pleased to know that there are some First Nation languages that continue to be so rich in fluency, which fluency means your everyday conversation, and that is the only language that you use. It pleases my heart to know that there are First Nation communities and people whereby their language, their ancestral original language, is their first language. That pleases my heart. I'm so proud of two of my grandchildren who are trilingual. They are fluent from birth in learning their language from the home, the Algonquin language. And yes, they've learned English, like we all had to learn English. And they learned French because they're educated in French. So they are trilingual. But it pleases my heart to know that they are fluent in their language. And with the fluency of language comes that ancestral knowledge. It comes that traditional knowledge of what the land means, the medicines, the way of life, and all those cultural practices. And all our children deserve this. All our children deserve that birthright to know who they are. All our First Nations children deserve to practice their culture holistically, with that embedded in that traditional or ancestral knowledge. So the communities find their different ways, they develop and deliver different ways to promote and protect a language, such as curriculum development, building language resources, delivering language nests, utilizing the language speakers into communities, bringing them together, putting it in daycare, putting it in a primary school, offering it as well as in secondary school. Banking the language through recordings of language speakers, knowledge keepers, ceremonial keepers. Writing the language is another means of protecting the language. holding language and cultural workshops, even as simple as a beading, bringing people together to do some beading or making crafts, and the language is spoken. And that's how you pass on the language. How do we learn a language? How do we all learn a language? Doesn't matter what color we are or what race we are. How do we all learn a language? By listening. We learn a language by listening to those that speak to us. And therefore, we see many of our communities that have gathered the children and the families, because there are still many, the reality is even the adults have been impacted with the loss of language and culture. So the parents, they have to learn the language. And you bring the young, you bring families together, you bring the elders together, and just speak the language. Just speak it so you hear it and you become immersed in hearing the language, and then you learn. Even if it takes one word a day, it's so important. So important. And I always tell you, our young people, a simple acknowledgement each and every morning to our Creator by saying, Chimigwedge, thank you. Kishiminado, thank you, Creator, for this day. And again, in the evening, to say Miigwech, and again, thank you. Learn one word a day. It's so important, and you build it into a sentence. Learn those root words. So there's various methods that are used and delivered. The organization that I work for, the First Nations Confederacy of Cultural Education Centers, we are a membership of cultural centers located in our communities from across the land, from the East Coast right across every province and region, territory. And those cultural centers provide and they develop, and they also deliver the necessary language and cultural education programs to ensure that their communities, their nations do not lose the language, to revitalize the language, to protect it. So for what one community will use may be different in another community, because maybe in one community, an Algonquin community is flourishing in their language, but they still need to find those mechanisms to ensure that their language is protected, where it will not be lost. Whereas another community may not have any speakers, and they then go out to a neighboring community who speaks their same language, and they bring in those speakers to help them to develop the curriculum, the language resourcing, and to teach the language. Classroom settings, daycare settings, language nest settings, gathering community of adult learners together, doing it through various means such as hand games or craft making or land-based education. More and more we are seeing our communities developing and offering land-based education, because land-based education is our cultural practice, how we've lived our life every day: hunting, trapping, fishing, our planting, harvesting foods, our traditional foods, harvesting the knowledge, learning the knowledge of the medicine, harvesting the medicines, making those medicines for whatever we need for, including those spiritual medicines that we need in our ceremonies. So I encourage you to learn more about the First Nations Confederacy of Cultural Education Centers. I can share a report with you that highlights who the centers are and the kinds of language and cultural activities that they are developing and delivering to their communities. Are there any other questions? Because I do have more to offer, but I'll save it for questions, because perhaps the questions that are asked will be, my answers are already contained in the presentation, the remainder of my presentation. But I have to say.
Thank you, Elder Commander. Thank you. We have about a couple of minutes left. And the question has to do with with your impressions and your thoughts around the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and what does that represent for you personally?
Very good question. Thank you for asking the question. What does it mean to me as a First Nation person? What does it mean to me as a mother and a grandmother whose children and grandchildren are intergenerational survivors of residential schools? What it means to me is that this country, Canada, to honor, to remember, and to respect residential school survivors, those that made it home. It's also a time that to mourn with our communities, to grieve the loss of our children who did not make it home, to honor and to remember those children that did not make it home. Because healing has to take place. Healing, our people have been on a journey of healing. And every day we walk the path of healing. And the country as well, Canadians as well. This is your history too, residential schools. And you must take part in September 30th when we commemorate residential school survivors. It's a time of education as well. It's a time to listen and to learn. A time for sharing and a time to provide that space to the residential school survivors for their stories to be told, for their stories to be heard. It's a time for Canada to learn. And by learning,
Thank you, Elder Commander. There was a pause there, and I thought I might ask a couple of other questions that come in. That came in. The teachers are sending gratitude and thank yous for your wise words. A couple of questions that come in was about kind of the history of the language in terms of like, what do you know from how far back does the language begin? Where did it start? When was it created? And also when your nation gets bullied, how do you feel? So those are the two questions that come in: the history of your language, the roots of your language, the origin, and how do you feel? And then we'll close on after your remarks. Okay.
Okay, so there's two questions, but you want me to ask one question, answer one question?
Answer both of them, please.
Okay, I will ask you to repeat the second question. So let me answer the first. Where did our languages originate? Well, we don't have a timeline on this because our creation story tells us that our languages have been here since time immemorial. And that our languages were created by the Creator in that spirit world. That we were created as spirits first and foremost. And then we were given the gift to live as human beings upon Mother Earth. And then when we walk our physical world and that walk is finished, we return home to the spirit world, and therefore we take our spirit with us and we take our language with us. So there's no timeline in the way you understand it as perhaps like, 7,000 AD and somebody came to us and taught us the language. No. And why we know that our languages were created here on this land called Turtle Island or North America is because we cannot find any of our First Nation languages anywhere else in this world. We cannot. Unlike those that have come to make Canada their home, they can return back to their home, their mother country. Should they lose their language, they can return back to their mother country to learn their language, whether if that language is English or French, Italian, Chinese, Arabic, whatever, and whomever. They can return home to their mother country, or they can turn to their mother country because their languages are there in their mother country. Their languages were born and originate in their mother homeland. For us as First Nations people, our tribes, all those numerous tribes across North America, we have nowhere else on earth to go. The Algonquin people, where are we going? Where other place other than Canada, United States, where can we go for the Algonquin language? Nowhere. Where do the Dene go other than their own territory? Nowhere. Where do the Ojibwe go, or the Cree, or the Maliseet, or the Mi'kmaq, or the Plains Cree, or any of the BC tribes. Where? Nowhere, because they originate here in this place, which is now called North America, which is now referred to as United States of America and Canada. So we know that our languages were created here, they come from this land, and they are on this land. And that is why it's so important that we promote and protect our languages to survive, because once they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah, thank you, Elder Commanda, for that. There's another question that's come in, and I know we're pressed for time, so this will be the last one. So the question is, what would you say to non-Indigenous people who are afraid to offend or do not know what to say or what to do when speaking or interacting with Indigenous people?
Well, you know, I'm a firm believer that if you don't try, you're not going to learn. I'm a firm believer in trial and error, trials and tribulations. We're human. We all make mistakes. Maybe I can answer your question in the way that my grandfather answered a question that I asked him. I had asked my grandfather, Gramps, where do you get the patience? And how do you deal with so much of the ignorance and the racism that we experience as First Nations people? How do you deal with this? So my grandfather said to me, you need to, okay, how he said was, there are two kinds of ignorance. Two kinds. One is the ignorance whereby they don't know any better, but they want to learn. They want to learn. And so you teach them, you show them, and then they change. But then the other kind of ignorance is no matter what you tell them, no matter what you offer them, those kind of people will never change, because in their heart, they carry negativity and they're very not nice people. He said, do not waste your valuable time and energy and intelligence on those that don't want to learn. Put your energies and extend your hand and offer it to those that want to learn. So what I say to individuals is that if you don't ask, you'll never know. And I've been in situations in my classroom with my students and I encourage my students to ask questions. I encourage them. And I know the difference between somebody that's saying somebody that is racist versus someone who wants to learn and is trying to find that right way to learn. So in my class as a professor, yes, there are times that I've received some very deep racist comments from students, and it's very difficult to carry. However, I know that if 2 or 3 or 4 students are racist, if I have a classroom of 100 students and 3 are racist, then I know the 97 other students are not. So I just, I give them back ownership of their ignorance and of their racism, and I continue to teach from that kindness from my heart. So, but yet my students will ask questions, and I tell them, like, if you don't ask, you're never going to learn. And so they will say, well, I'm afraid to ask it this way because I might not know how to ask. I say, just ask. So please, if you don't ask, you're never going to learn. So don't be afraid to ask. Please don't be afraid. I encourage you to use your voice, and we will tell you that, okay, well, this is what you're looking for. We will answer you, but from now on, this is how you can ask a question, but please ask.
Thank you so much, Elder Commanda, for sharing, your wisdom and also sharing some wisdom from your grandfather, and his teachings that you so faithfully learned, and for passing that on to us. That brings our session to an end. I want to thank Elder Commanda. I would like to thank all of you who participated, who are with us. We can't see you, but we are grateful that many of you have indicated to us where you're from, and many have expressed which traditional territory you are on, and we're grateful for that. The program, as you know, will continue tomorrow, Thursday, for those of you who will be in class, and Friday. Remember, Thursday evening will be the national broadcast on Truth and Reconciliation, on the first ever National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and that'll be on CBC, APTN, and you'll also on Société Radio-Canada. The broadcast will be in 3 languages. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. In several Indigenous languages, and in English and in French. So it would be a great opportunity to hear, more First Nations languages, Inuit, and some Michif as well. So thank you, everyone, for allowing us into your classrooms and for taking this journey of learning with us. And I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Take care.